Okay guys, let's do some more questions here from previous videos and conversations we had. So I'm going to kick it off with a post I made where I said, hot take, progressing naturally on just clean food is a myth. There's no way to get enough calories in to get stronger on just clean food alone. And the expense of trying to eat nothing but clean food while eating enough calories would be unreasonable for most lifters. And I said I adhere to around a 75 clean, 25% dirty food split. So yeah, this is one of those things, like, if you're just eating clean food, nothing but ground beef and rice and things like that, it's just, you're gonna have to eat an absurd amount to where it's gonna get completely ridiculous as far as the expenses of it. So my point was, having to throw in things like pizza, having to throw in ice cream, things like that, it's almost necessary if you don't want to break the bank and you still want to get enough calories to progress. Because over the last month or two, I've really come to realize how important simply eating enough is and getting stronger. My strength is really ratcheting up right now. And a big part of it is I've gained like 11 pounds because I'm eating more. So as a natural lifter, you really have to eat more. And part of that is creatine as well. But if you're not eating enough, you're probably not going to get stronger. And my weight, the weight gain's slowing down a little right now, but I'm like 228 and a half, 229. So I've gained some substantial weight, and you just have to eat. If you want to get stronger naturally, you have to eat. There's no way around it. There's nothing. If you're natural and you are not eating enough protein or not eating enough food, period, you're not going to get stronger. It's just not going to happen. You have to be getting enough protein in and eating enough food. When I was on steroids, I could eat like 80 grams of protein a day and still get stronger. Like literally, my diet was trash. I wouldn't even have to eat protein and I could get stronger. But now, if I don't eat protein, it's over. Like, I have to eat a pound of ground beef a day. I have to eat 5 eggs. I have to eat protein. Like, if I don't do that kind of stuff and get the healthy fats in, the healthy fats and protein are key. And then eating enough in general. If I don't do that, I don't get stronger. So it's just one of those things. Like, I started to realize, I'm like, I could pull 650 at 215 body weight, or I could pull something ridiculous at 230. Like, what would I rather do? It's a completely obvious answer. The strength difference is insane. Even benching 365 at 215 body weight compared to benching 400 plus at 230, it's like a no-brainer. But you just got to eat more. That's how you get stronger. I look way bigger. I look like I could have ran a mild cycle because I'm so much bigger than I was a month or two ago, just by eating more. And creatine. And creatine is legit. Like, I've kind of like changed my opinion a little bit on creatine, because before I was like, creatine, how much can it actually help? I think it helps substantially. Like, once you get it in your system saturated after a couple of weeks, there's noticeable strength and endurance gains, noticeable. And I think it's 100% a legit supplement that I will take out after the meet, but for the next 6.5 weeks, I'm going to keep running it because it's definitely helping. But some of the comments, so Steve Candathil says, stews, the naturals, bulking food, macros and macros, and insane ability to customize the taste, pairs with rice or potatoes or damn near whatever else. Stews are underrated. Now, I'm going to be honest, maybe this is like a European thing or something. Stews means like soup, right? Can someone clarify what exactly is a stew? Because I know he says customizable and everything. So I take it that's like a broth with what you just put whatever you want in it. Cheese and I don't know, stews. We don't really say the word stews in America. So that's something I want to clarify. Kevin McAllister says, which is really interesting because Kevin McAllister is what my baby daughter was for Halloween, and then we were the two what is it, robber guys, Merv and Harry. I'll put up a picture. So it's interesting that Kevin McAllister is posting here when we did that for Halloween. He says, my thoughts are I'm about to load up on pizza, mac and cheese, chips, and cereal. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that should be the base of your diet, the foundation. But once you get in that other stuff, having some of this stuff is okay. You need it to get the calories up. This guy says it depends on how you define clean food. I'm not going to post the whole thing. It's very long. He says, a lot of times what's considered clean and dirty seems dependent on how calorically dense the food is. This is true because there's things like peanut butter that would be technically a clean food in my opinion, that are very calorically dense. But This guy says he's cutting with 3,900 calories plant-based. So he's basically doing that with peanut butter. I mean, I guess with peanut butter, but it'd still be pretty hard to get that many calories in. And then another guy says basically the same thing. Bald Omni-Man was on here. He says he thinks it can be done clean if you add in a ton of easily digestible stuff and healthy fats like peanut butter. But nobody's doing that long term. They're going to sneak in ice cream and take out 20% of the time. So basically what I'm getting at, everybody seems to say, well, it can be done with clean food, and then no one has any examples outside of peanut butter, though. So peanut butter is kind of the one to go with as far as the healthy fats. But outside of that, you guys are just proving my point that you have to throw in some other things. So interesting conversation there. Now let's go back to my video about what's really holding you back, where I talk about low back strength. And this is one of those things I'll summarize here again, where I think a lot of people, you know, don't look at low back strength and how much of a role that plays in getting stronger overall with the posterior chain. It's not often the hamstrings, glutes, and lats and that sort of thing. So this guy says, he's asking basically the Savvy Natty. This guy always has good questions. He says he started doing 45-degree back raises, and he felt it more in his back when he put the bar across his traps instead of off the floor. He said, why do I do them off the floor? And off the floor, you can handle heavier loads, but you can also, it works your grip more, and you can just overload the movement more, where it's more applicable to a deadlift. It's much more similar to a deadlift. So that's why I like to do them in that manner. Albeit I haven't given them much of a fair shot on my back. I haven't tried that too much. So glute specialist, here's another one. You know, I don't know why I keep posting the same ones, but basically, you know, they're commenting like upper back is overrated, which is what I said in the video. And I have said that before, where upper back is just a little overrated. It's not the end all be all. Let's see here though. Let's go to another thing. And I'll post up a Q&A so you guys can ask better ones. Or if you want to ask questions in the comments here, we can do that too. So Mo A says, how much does your total go up when you hop on gear? We have a few examples like hack. Assuming SSJ Bob Matthews is natty, what would his numbers be on gear? If Dan Bell was natty, what would his numbers be? The one thing I think that is very overlooked in this argument is how close to your ceiling are you already naturally? So I don't necessarily think if Bob Matthews is natural and he's hitting the numbers he's hitting, I don't think there's an exponential amount his numbers would go up if he hopped on gear. I think he's closer to his ceiling without gear, meaning he would get less out of the drugs if he were to take them. So if we assume he's a genetic freak and he got on gear, his deadlift might only get to 950 or 1,000, which is still freaking insane. But the ceiling might be lower than what it would be someone who's starting at a lower point. Does that make sense? So like Jamal pulled around 790 naturally, maybe 760 naturally, Jamal did. 760, 771, and he's at like 1,100. So his ceiling is a little higher than if someone's already at 850 without steroids. So they're not going to get quite as much. So that's the one argument I would make in this case, where you wouldn't see SSJ Bob pull 1,200 or something like that. He's just closer to the ceiling without the drugs, which is something I never considered for many years, but it's definitely a thing. Jordan West, good question here. My question is, why would a powerlifter on drugs lift in a tested federation? There are so many good untested federations. Personally, I think the top guys in USAPL, IPF are drug-free. I also think it's a weak mindset to say he's only stronger than me because of drugs. This is something I've really come around to the idea of. I'm more willing to believe people are natural based on the progress I've made since coming off drugs. Because in the last 2 months, the progress from eating more and things like that has been insane. So a lot of people would look at that progress on my deadlift and bench and say that's not possible. But it really makes you think. It's like, if you maximize these things like your diet, your, taking creatine, sleeping enough, you can get pretty dang strong. But I do think there are a lot of people who slip through the cracks because it just looks better. It's almost like a moral stance of like, ironically not moral if you're taking drugs and you're a fake natty and you're competing tested, but it's almost this superiority complex of I'm doing this without drugs, so I'm better than you. Like it's signifying that I have better genetics, essentially. So it's this complex of superior genetics that people are trying to display. And if you can claim you're stronger than everybody and you're not taking any drugs without any help, you're claiming genetic superiority. And that makes you feel good. That's why people do this. That's why people cheat. That's what this is all about. As opposed to if you're on drugs, it's easy for people to dismiss you and say the drugs are doing that. That is why I think people do it from a psychological perspective. Let's see what else we got. This guy says Scoot 3, he says the truly best natty will always be called a fake natty, I believe. Now, I do think the majority of those called fake natties in powerlifting are actually natural. But I do think there's probably a couple who slip through the cracks. So I think he's right. The majority of them may actually be natural. But people are going to be skeptical because of their numbers, basically. Okay. Tom Armstrong says, people are way too concerned about what is possible. Just push yourself. Be insanely disciplined. Listen to your body. Never let fear control your training. Just go for it. And a lot of us natties can be stronger and sometimes bigger than dudes on gear. Well, this is actually an interesting thing. I talked about this earlier. When you're on gear, you can get away with a lot more stuff. You can eat poorly. You can not train as hard. Your training can be subpar. You can max all the time and still progress. When you're off it, you have to train optimally. You have to do all these things optimally. You have to eat optimally. You have to do all. There's no room for error. So you can get pretty freaking strong without it, but you have to do it. You have to have everything dialed in, and you can't get away with things and mistakes you would make if you were on gear. Okay. This guy, Let's Die Gaming, says, I got another question. I know the IPF changed the bench rule, but why not all the other federations? What took so long? If you ask anybody, they think the crazy arch and grip is dumb. If I could run a federation, if I could run a powerlifting federation, here's what I would do. No crazy bench arch. We would do flat back benching, literally. Like, I would just say, screw it. We're going to do feet up Larson presses with our feet straight out on a box. So we can't arch. I would make a grip rule where you can't go wider than like pinkies on the rings even. So we got maximum range of motion. And I would do that for bench. It would make bench way more legit. Where bench is literally just like a strict upper body press as far as your upper body strength. Not manipulated by leg drive, not manipulated by arching, any of that stuff. For deadlift, I'd go conventional only on a stiff bar. So I know a lot of people would not like this, but I would give it a sumo, and I would go conventional only. So basically your hands have to be outside of your legs. And I would go stiff bar, 7-foot standard Ohio power bar. Ohio power bar being the stiffest bar out there. No give to it, 7-foot bar, so not much bend at all. And I would that would legitimize things to and I would also have pause squats. I would make people pause the squat in the hole, and that would make depth a lot more legit. So those were the changes I would make. If I had started a federation, I won't do it because it's a lot of work. But those are kind of the things I would do if I could start my dream federation. And then as far as raw, the other thing I would do, raw would be only a belt. No wrist straps, no knee sleeves. I would even consider making the argument of no belt. Like raw would just be walk up to the bar. What can you do? That's it. So I would even be willing to get rid of the belt. No belt, no sleeves, no wrist straps, nothing. That's it. Knee wraps, none of that. That's not raw. That would be the most legit federation ever, and I think a lot of people would get on board with it. But at the end of the day, the reason things like the Kabuki deadlift bar exist, and knee sleeves, the Inzer knee sleeves, things like that, are people want to maximize how much weight they're lifting. They don't care if there's slight manipulations. They just want to lift as much as possible because it's cool. So maybe it wouldn't do so well as far as the federation. People just want to lift the most weights, because if you came into my federation, everyone's lifts would go way down because everything would be so much harder. So they wouldn't want to do that. But that would be what would legitimize powerlifting. That would 100% do it. And that's kind of, that's what I wish. I wish things could be like that. But unfortunately, they can't. And if you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe for the sake of the algorithm, and I will keep these coming. I appreciate you guys.